gonna happen.
Yeah.
Good morning, today is Thursday, September 24th, 2020, we are here for a work session. As always, we will start with the pledge. Tim, can you please take the lead?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tim. All right, we have, today we have 6 discussion items on the agenda. The first one is the police August monthly report. Chief Hagemello, can you please come forward?
Did you get
Good
a
morning.
haircut?
I did get a haircut again.
A little too close on the top there, chief.
No, the last one was worse, this one's a little longer.
I like short hair.
Yeah.
As Jody would say, did you get a lollipop with that haircut?
No lollipop.
No. Okay, I hope everyone has it.
Yes.
Sent it to you a couple weeks ago, so, it's pretty unremarkable, everything's down basically, still, under COVID. The only thing that we had a small spike in was criminal incidents, which is probably due to larcenies.
To what?
Larcenies. And so we've had a couple areas where we've had stuff taken out of vehicles in your driveway at night. So, I just wanna remind everyone out there, no matter where you live in the town of Riverhead, lock your car. Don't leave anything in it, don't leave your cell phone in it, don't leave change in it, don't leave your wallet in it, your pocketbook.
GPS.
All valuables secured, lock the car, they'll pass you by. So that's what you have to do. And that's pretty much it.
I see the arrests are up.
Arrests are starting to make their way back up, I mean, it's not to where we
We're in
were the
January,
past,
February,
right,
March.
But, definitely, coming back up.
But that's across the board,
Yes.
and with the creeping back up, in other towns, they have spiked quite heavily, so I think that's,
So we'll take creeping over spiking.
yes, absolutely.
Yes, and the supervisor and I have reviewed the, year-to-date figures on criminal incidents, and as I said before, unremarkable, everything is still below last year's numbers, so.
Where is the prisoners detained on this, chief?
H2, I believe.
Page 2, so in August, there were 11 detained out of 27 arrests?
Correct.
Chief, they're asking you to move a little closer to the mic.
While maintaining 6 feet. Or speak a little louder, chief.
I'll move back.
Okay,
Okay, we're good?
Well, yep.
we're good. Yep,
Councilwoman,
I
you
can
good?
see,
Yes. Thank you.
oh,
And we're going up tomorrow, when are we going?
Today.
Today, okay.
Right after work session.
Sounds good. Good?
okay, great.
Am I staying up here for the next one?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Moving forward, item number 2, fire marshal, matters surrounding possible code revision to chapter 231, tent fee amendments.
So this came to code revision, and I asked Craig to discuss it, I think he wants to look into the way tents are handled, correct?
Correct. We've had some issues in the past, and last year was a particularly year we had a number of issues. Our tent code is rather vague, and so I was looking at trying to make some changes to it, so it'll make it easier for us to enforce, for people to know what it is they need to do. One of the biggest issues is that we get a lot of tent applications at the last minute on a Friday afternoon. So now we have to scramble to process them. They're for that weekend, and then a lot of times we're going out on overtime in order to do these tent inspections. So one of the things that we're looking at is trying to require that tent applications come in a week ahead of time so that we can process the application, issue a permit like we would do with all our other permits, and then they would schedule an inspection. We'd go out and do the inspection during normal business hours, and then, once that passes, we would issue the CFC, the Certificate of Compliance, for the tent. Again, we've had issues with, in the past, you know, we're going out after hours, the tent isn't put up until Friday evening. Somebody has to go out on overtime on Saturday or Sunday. Now we have Frank working the weekends, so that won't be as big an issue. However, weekends when he is not available, such as this week and next week, he is up at the Fire Academy for the fire investigative training, so he will not be working this weekend or next weekend, and I believe we have a tent going up next weekend. So we're just trying to look at, you know, not the town having to pay extra money or costing the town more money for the tent applications. Did everyone get a copy of? I had sent it to the town. So I'm just trying to clean it up a little bit and make it a little more straightforward. I don't know if you have any questions or if,
What enhancements are you considering?
well, basically,
Yeah, talk
We
about
have
the
it.
fees maybe first.
okay, with the fee, well, what we're requiring is that tents, you know, and the violations would be, you know, tents that are erected without a permit, which currently we do write tickets on, but then also applications that are received less than 1 week prior to the date that the tent is supposed to go up, there would be a penalty fee. If the inspection occurs after normal business hours, so in other words, we have to go out on a Friday night or on a Saturday when, you know, Frank isn't working, they're required more than 2 inspections. All our other permits, you're allowed 2 inspections, and then you've got to pay the fee again. Sometimes when we go out to these tents, the first time we go out, they're not properly staked, or they don't have emergency lighting, or we don't have, you know, there are other issues with it, and we call up the tent company and tell them to come back out. Fire extinguishers are out of date, or there are no fire extinguishers. And they come out and they fix half of it, and we go out again, and again, you know, we have to call them back, and so now we're going out a 3rd time or a 4th time to try and get, you know, the tents so that they're proper, so that they can hold their events for that weekend. I mean, no one wants to tell a bride that she can't have her wedding outside under a tent because the tent company hasn't put the tent up correctly.
Craig, just for clarity though, this is for commercial applications.
This is only for commercial.
If you're having a
Right,
graduation party and you put up a
Right.
10
We
by
do not-
20 tent or something, you're not falling
Yeah,
into
we
this.
don't require permits, the town does not require permits for residential, so this would be anything other than residential.
But for farms, if there's a wedding on a farm or a vineyard or something
With
like that, is
vineyards,
it?
no, the vineyards put in for applications,
They
yes,
do.
they do need a tent application, basically anything other than residential requires a tent application through the
Because a lot
town.
of times they don't know, I mean, I can see why the applications would come in last minute, because they don't know that it's gonna be raining that weekend, and then, you know, the
Right.
bride doesn't wanna get married under a tent if she doesn't have to, so they'd rather not have a tent, but
I understand.
I guess they're gonna have to make accommodations
Well,
for that.
we're
and-
gonna have to make some type of an accommodation, because a lot of times, like I said, these will come in Friday afternoon, because all of a sudden, you know, Friday, now the weather's iffy for this weekend, whereas on Monday, there was supposed to be a beautiful weekend. But now, we're scrambling to try and get the paperwork processed, and to get out there and get the inspections done. Sometimes the tent isn't put up till Friday night, sometimes it's not put up till Saturday afternoon, just before the event is occurring.
No, I
So it
understand.
becomes a problem with us, and there have been times when we have missed things, or we're getting there as the event is going on and saying, well, you know, this isn't properly staked, or you know, so
So
we're
Craig-
trying to avoid that.
Yeah, and just to clarify, cause I asked Craig ahead of time, this isn't like a COVID-related upswing on tents. Craig was saying that, actually,
No,
cause we did talk about people allowing tents, restaurants and such,
Right, for
but
the
this
the
was
COVID
always, this
outdoor
was an
dining,
issue
for
for a
those
while.
tents, the town elected not to charge fees. So, but again, they still need to put in the application so that we can go out and do the inspection.
Right,
And I don't have a problem with that.
But
It's-
this issue went beyond a year. This has
Yeah.
been an issue.
This has been an issue prior to this year.
Right.
It's actually, last year, we had a number of issues where tents were coming in and we were getting bombarded on a Friday afternoon. And, you know, we just, this time of year with the traffic, trying to get it out east or then back up west, or hit a few different places, you can spend 2 hours just driving around on the road, you know, going back and forth between places.
And what's the cost for the late fee? I don't see it here.
The penalty
Am
for
I-
any violations would
am I
be
missing something?
the double of the permit fee.
Double the cost?
Correct.
Okay,
So there's a sliding scale in the town code currently
okay.
for,
We just raised the fees for these, didn't we?
we did, I think, 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago we did. And currently, the first tent up to 1,000 square feet is $175. A tent greater than 1,000, from 1,000 to 5,000 square feet is $200.
Okay.
Tents between 5,000 and 10,000 are $225.
Yeah, we definitely need to raise those up.
And then over $10,000 is $250. And if you're putting up multiple tents, you pay for the largest tent, and then every additional tent is only $125.
Yeah, so I agree, we need to raise those fees, especially because it's just commercial. But I think that there has to be some accommodation for the last minute tent applications that are gonna come in. And even if it's $500, you know, if it's not coming in within, you know, a week before, then anytime during that duration, it's $500, and then every time you have to go out, again, it's another $500. And the tent company should be responsible to pay for that, because they're asking us to expedite something which is costing us overtime.
Correct.
And it's, you know, even though we have a fire marshal on call throughout the weekends, you know, and there has to be something in there that says that the tent, if it comes in on a Friday afternoon and it's for a Saturday, the tent has to be up prior to 7 a.m. So that,
24-hour period?
so that you're meeting the traffic.
Right, well, I was gonna say, this time of year, yes, the traffic is a big issue. Just driving, you know, when Frank goes out and does his inspections, if he has to go out to Jamesport or Wading River and then to the other end of the town, he can spend an hour or more just driving back and forth between
Right.
the location.
So that's why I'm
Really,
saying, any
yeah.
application that comes in, the tent has to be up prior to 7 a.m. So that between 7 and 9 a.m., you should be able to hit 3 or 4 tents.
Well, and I could see your point, that it's really time consuming if you're talking about going from one end of town to the other. And then let's say this person, you have to go back again, so
Correct.
you're
Yeah, so it's
traversing
another $500
back
every
and
time they get
forth.
it wrong.
I think the late fees are doubled, right?
Yes, well, it would be the double the normal fee, so.
I think that anything, if you're saying you'd rather have the application a week prior,
If we can, because, again, some weekends it's not bad, you only get 1 or 2 in, but there have been times last year when we got 4 or 5 or 6 on a Friday afternoon, and now you're trying to get everybody together, you know, who's available to go out there and do them. You know, you call the tent company, they say, oh, yeah, it'll be up by 4 o'clock, and you're out there at 4 o'clock, and they haven't even started because
Right.
they're running late.
So that's
now
why-
you're going back out again on Saturday, and it may only, you know.
so what do you think about that? About if it comes in less than a week prior to the event?
I think there needs to be some
It's-
type of a penalty, so that I understand,
I think it's $500.
I mean, whatever you
That's
folks
doubling the fee
feel.
for those.
Well, I think people are going to have to monitor the weather more than just like a day or two before. I mean, if I'm having an event, I'm monitoring the weather every day.
Yeah.
I think 500 is pretty high because,
That seems a little
For
high.
an
Yeah,
expedited?
yeah,
and-
'cause if you notice here, we don't even have the initial cost. Nothing comes close to 500.
I know, but you're raising the fees now, right?
Well, that wasn't part of my proposal, but I mean, we could certainly look at it. I mean, they are probably low. I haven't really looked to see
They're
what
very
other-
low compared to Brookhaven.
Okay, I was gonna say, I have not had time to look and see what other jurisdictions are charging.
Well,
So
did
why
you-
don't we do this together as one project, and then Jody brings up a good point, and then we can compare them?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
why don't you just go back, and then we'll adjust it, talk with the chief, you know, your department head, and, adjust, see what you think is fair, and then come back with a full, and I think it's a good idea to do them, collectively,
Mhm.
Very
together.
good.
And I think that maybe we can ask the town board coordinator, cause, who's liaison to fire marshal? I think I'm fire chiefs, but I didn't know, if I was fire marshal, but maybe you can do,
I
look
thought we
around
had
in
you
other
down.
townships like Brookhaven,
Where's Devin?
Southampton, see what they charge for
Devin?
tents.
You are, Jody, you are the liaison.
I'm liaison of fire chiefs, I just wasn't
Um,
sure if internally with the office, if I was fire marshal, I thought it might have been.
I have you down. I
Okay.
have you down and.
All right, so
We try to
Carol,
fly under the
Carol will do
radar.
that for us, so we'll get
Craig,
a
did you
cost
get to-
analysis
did
for
you
each
go over
town as to what
everything?
they're charging.
Perfect.
Did you get to
Okay.
go over everything? Cause we
I believe
segued
so.
into something else.
That's all right, I believe so, I mean,
Police, yes. Oh, that's because now, yeah, that changed now. Right,
Yeah.
because they're under the auspices
So
of the
it's Tim.
police.
Right.
So I
So
guess
it's
it would be
Tim, not
me.
me.
Oh, okay, you're right. I forget, yeah, that's right.
You're in trouble now, Craig.
Yes, I
wouldn't have it
think-
any other way.
Anyway, you got to go over everything?
I believe so. Like I said, we put some things in there in the town code that we've always required, but it's never been in the code, such as staking of tents. The industry standard is that that tents be staked. We've always required that. There are other methods that can be done, but we require that we get a signed letter from an engineer stating how the tent is supposed to be staked or anchored. Because at one time, we used to use the 55-gallon drums filled with water until we had a little blow up at Tanger, and it flipped the tent that was being held down with those over. Thankfully, it was not during the event, and there was only damage to the tent and nothing else. But ever since then, we looked into the code a little bit further and talked to some other people, and, you know, tent and staking is the only thing that they will accept, and which is the only thing we accept. And again, unless you get an engineer. We do have certain places around town, such as the Hilton Garden Inn, does not use staking, but we have a letter from an engineer describing how that tent is to be anchored, and that's how they anchor it every year when they put it up.
So we're gonna be moving forward with this, but you're going to add in fees for, a penalty fee? Are we in agreement on an amount so that we can move forward with this?
Well, no,
We're gonna look at surrounding,
Good
townships
idea.
and what
Okay.
they do and.
I always
come
like to
back
do
with
that.
yeah,
Great,
and
perfect.
you'll discuss it with the chief,
I'll work
and then
with the
you
chief
guys,
and Tim,
and
yes.
Tim, and then you can come back and present.
Very good.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks,
you.
Craig.
Have a good day.
Okay,
You
you
too.
too. Okay, number 3, building planning, matters surrounding site plan for application 331 East Main Street, possible relocation of Norton House. Jody?
Anne Marie, you wanna come up? Yeah, I think that's okay.
Good morning.
I mean, I showed them the area, the general area that was, Anne Marie and I met out at the Second Street Firehouse yesterday. And on Third Street is where we're thinking would be the best location to relocate the Norton House. Bob Castaldi has agreed to take it. He knows that it's going to cost him anywhere between $200,000 and $300,000 because one side of the building is coming off in its entirety. The front is coming off and the back is coming off, but the back would just be open, so we would have to rebuild that. So, we're gonna hopefully move the Norton House over to Third Street between Roanoke and, what is the other street right there? It's Griffin, no.
Second.
No.
I don't have a full map.
East of Roanoke?
East,
It would be East Avenue.
between Roanoke and East Avenue. And it would go on Third Street and it would face Third Street. The current proprietor of the firehouse is North Fork Brewing Company. They are expanding exponentially since they've been there the last few months. And they're looking for additional space, so kind of fits in perfect with the plan. Bob Castaldi is requesting an expedited site plan approval, obviously, so we can get the house moved there. And then also waiving of the building permits, which Anne Marie has looked into. He's concerned that his taxes are gonna go through the roof once he moves the building here, so we still have to address that with the assessor's office, but, and then he also wanted, some sort of assurance that if he wanted to expand on the firehouse property, that this particular building wouldn't count towards his floor area ratio. So, I don't know that we can do that this quickly. I'm looking at Greg, he's hiding behind Chip. and Jefferson, but it's a way to save the historic house, and I think that the entire board feels that that's important. It's a house that was built in 1855, and we have somebody that's willing to take it. And we're working with Verizon and Cablevision to raise the wires, and the cost to raise the telephone, or the traffic light wires, the contractor is waiving all the fees in doing that to get the house there. So we're hoping that we'll be able to do it within the 70,000 and looking for fast track approvals for the site plan for the relocation of it and for the foundation permit.
Because time is of the essence for the
That's right.
other project.
So I've provided definitive opinions regarding some of the matters addressed by Councilwoman Giglio. I did send the town board a draft approximately a week ago regarding waiver of certain fees and reduction of certain fees. And I shared my rationale with the town board regarding, quote, not waiving all the fees, because obviously a foundation's gonna be required. You are gonna require foundation inspection. You're gonna require plumbing and electric inspection. And with respect to site plan, there was a caveat that you may view it for either waiver or reduction, provided that, quote, the site could adequately accommodate it with respect to setbacks, and it did not involve or include any additional means of ingress and egress, curb cuts, etc., because that then dovetails and requires planning then to really fully assess traffic patterns, traffic impacts. So here, we would not have that.
Yeah, let's try and just stick to,
Yeah.
because it's confusing when you say the curb cuts and everything
Okay.
else. That's not necessary.
No, no,
It's really
I know.
just picking up the building and putting a foundation in and putting the building on top and
I
getting the
agree,
wires.
Jody.
moved.
I'm
Okay.
just explaining to the town board, you have that draft resolution, and that's why it's worded that way. So the largest hurdle is that in order to accomplish this, the town would be transferring, deeding over 12 parking spaces.
It's actually an area, and it's,
Yeah,
the
so-
parking spaces have been redefined since the, firehouse has been purchased. It's been restriped, so
Right.
it's, and the parking's not being used right now, and we do own a large lot on the corner of Third Street and Roanoke Avenue that could be used for overflow parking, as well as Suffolk County National Bank parking lot on weekends and, evenings, which doesn't prohibit parking there.
Right, so when the town actually took title to this property, it did not take it for the purposes of parking. It took it, believe it or not, for the purposes of town offices. At the time that we did the transfer, we did it thinking perhaps we were gonna relocate some of the town offices and they'd at least be proximate to town hall, which the site is. That did not occur. Thereafter, the town board approved selling the buildings for historic purposes together with a portion of the property. And the town kept an L shape around it. So the councilwoman is correct with respect to where the proposed location is. I can tell you that 2 of the parking spaces actually are non-functional. They actually deadlock into each other, so you could, there's telephone poles and fixtures, so if one car pulled in, the other car couldn't pull behind it because he could never get out. So it's essentially dead space. In addition, the councilwoman and I looked at the property, and there's an entire area along the side, which I'm not really quite sure why, was never striped for parking, but clearly available. So we could simply restripe that and capture really nearly all of the parking spaces we would be deeding and transferring over. Town board is also aware there's various provisions of law with respect to town boards, municipalities, landmarks preservation committees' ability to undertake certain things with the goal of preservation of historic structures. You know, I think when you look at the totality of what the councilwoman is trying to accomplish, it's a historic structure where you have a developer willing to not only donate the building, but also $70,000 related to the cost of, quote, relocation. The town, if they were to undertake it themselves to preserve this property, we would in fact be locating it on, for instance, this exact town property. But what we would be required to do is, we would be required to undertake all of the improvements, the foundation, the electrical, etc. I know from speaking to representatives of Mangano Funeral Home who were actually desirous initially of taking it, but it just didn't fit. And plus
it
a
was a
third
lot of money.
wall, fourth wall you have to create, that the costs are probably $300,000 or over. That's a heavy burden for the town to actually undertake, especially at this particular point in time. So the fact that there is a potential developer who's willing to take that on, and in addition, the councilwoman and I discussed with him, obviously, he would have to restore it, rehabilitate it, because there's one wall that's gonna have to be constructed. In addition, he's going to agree, in any conveyance that the town would do, that he would allow use of the property in furtherance of the arts within the town of Riverhead, whether it's small music performances, poetic readings, art showings, and he would allow it to be part of like a walking tour of historic structures within the town of Riverhead.
And this is going up online for the media or
Say,
for
Anne
people that aren't
Marie,
here.
sorry, I got distracted.
Sure.
Just to back up, did you say that, the person who is taking the building is going to be willing to do that?
Well,
Or
who
that
we
was another-
anticipate, yes, would be
Okay.
willing to actually essentially covenant that, so we can really, we, the town, can make it part of our preservation efforts and historic tours of the buildings we have successfully preserved thus far, including two that were preserved by Mr. Castaldi already, one being the Suffolk Theater, which was one of the first and the king landmarks for Main Street. The Second Street Firehouse, which he undertook, and this would actually be his third. So I think Mr. Petroselli and Bob Castaldi really have a keen interest in preserving historic structures in the town of Riverhead, and the proof is in the pudding in what they've actually accomplished and how beautiful their historic restorations look. So,
That's in a nutshell, and we have Richard and we have the developer on the Zoom call and the attorney for the developer of 331 East Main, so I know, Richard, you probably wanna weigh in on this, does anybody else?
While
Unmute
they're,
yourself, Richard. There we go.
Um,
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, I
morning.
don't want to say very much, just that the Landmarks Commission has identified this as a significant historic structure, intimately connected with Riverhead's maritime history and well worth preservation. This sounds like the only option we have now. There are still a number of difficulties in working out how to get it there, but to me, it's up to the town board to decide if the land if this is viable as far as providing the property, but we totally support the idea of moving the building there. It would be connected to other historic structures. It would be a nice location for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, we are willing to participate in the relocation of the Norton House and the moving of the house. We don't want it to hold up our demolition permit or our building permits. And we have to work out the details of how we contribute our contribution, how we make our contribution and to whom we're making the contribution towards the relocation of the house. So those are the details I have to work out. I'm not sure if you want me to work it out with the town attorney's office, but those details need to be ironed out.
Okay, yeah, so, Jody has the lead on this, and I'm sure if it's gonna happen, she'll make it happen.
And I think that those are great questions, and we don't wanna hold you up. I think that, when speaking to Bobby Walsh, who is on the call, when we had done the site visit with Councilman Hubbard, myself, and, Richard, there was a deadline, I think they said the demolition, contractor was coming in on October 15th. So if you
That's
wanna
the top,
verify.
that is,
What?
that's what we're trying to target, you know, it's not a fixed date, but as you can see, we've been trying to work with you guys from day one here, and we'll continue to do so until it gets accomplished.
Yes,
But
and we're very
we do
appreciative
wanna-
of that.
we do want to maintain our timeline.
Mhm.
You know, there's investors involved and everything else, so, you know, I'll continue to work with Rich and Cliff, and we'll figure it out.
Right, but you had said that, you know, October 15th, I thought, was the drop dead date, that it had to be moved by that date, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So I'd like to take a minute to weigh in on this. I'm definitely in favor of this. I love the work that's been done. And I want to take a moment to thank Jody and Anne Marie for working on this, for thanking the developer, Bobby and Chris, happy that we're moving forward with this, and I want to thank Landmarks. I think it's a great thing, and I hope that as time goes on, that we are able to restore more and more of the historic structures in the downtown area, because we have a lot of beautiful homes downtown that I think we can restore, and I hope we continue to move in the same direction.
Okay, right?
I mean, I would just, as a matter of process, I would ask the question is how, because this application has still not received final site plan approval. You know, there would be conditions of final site plan approval, they'd have to covenant. So how does this now factor into getting a final approval? If this location is determined to be suitable, is that something that the board, is the board ready to grant final approval on the 6th? Because I don't see how we can issue any building permits.
They have a conditional final approval. Have they met all the requirements of the conditional final approval?
Well, so they got preliminary approval. I did prepare a
Any
quick
conditional
memo detailing it. At this point, they have addressed the building elevations, the ground floor non-residential use, whatever it may be, you know, small cafe, that sort of thing. They have paid the fees. The plans have been reviewed by the ARB and the Landmarks Preservation. They've both given their sign-off on the elevations and materials. The plan was referred to the Suffolk County Planning Commission per General Municipal Law, Section 239. Suffolk County Planning Commission considered it to be a matter for local determination. The main points that were remaining were the preservation of the Norton House and the precondition surveys of the neighboring properties, which is something that I wanted to just bring to the board's attention. Based upon their proposed foundation system, the Vibro pier system, the engineer's letter, I believe he said the established limit for vibrations causing damages to neighboring structures, if I recall, was 2 inches per second, I believe is how it was measured. The engineer's letter stated that at a distance of beyond 11 feet, the vibration, I believe it went down to like 0.4 or something, which was significantly below the threshold. So just in terms of the structures that the board would like these precondition surveys conducted on, we recommended, now the 2 neighboring buildings are the Riverhead Stationery and the East End Coin Shop, which is directly to the east of the site, as well as the Riverhead Aquarium. We would recommend the Salvation Army building and the Turquoise Grill to undergo these precondition surveys, just to assess for any potential damages that would be caused by the vibration of these pier stabilization systems. We had initially raised concerns in the report, the DeRosca House as well as the church on the north side, but the DeRosca residence is over 300 feet away and the church is over 400 feet away. Based on the engineer's description of the system, I mean, if it's nominal vibrations beyond 11 feet, I would think 300 and 400 feet would be well outside of any range to be impacted. So if the board agrees, we would include those conditions, those 4 structures, as I said, the stationery, the coin shop, the aquarium, the Salvation Army, and the Turquoise Grill. And I think that could be included as a condition prior to the issuance of a building permit.
So they've satisfied all the conditions of preliminary approval per se, and you're asking us to adopt a final approval, correct?
Well, I believe I've been contacted by the applicant a number of times. They are trying to get the final approval. They have been looking for that October 6th date. So, I mean, I can prepare a draft resolution, prepare it for next week's work session. If the board's agreeable with it, we could put it on for adoption potentially at the October 6th meeting. And it would maybe still be just left open. There may be some language there similar to if the suitable location is found, because there is still some issues that the board would need to address with Mr. Castaldi, just in terms of moving the structure. So if the board's amenable to that, I can prepare a draft resolution, have it on for next week
Okay.
work session, and we can go from there.
Before we get to that point, item number 10, the Parks Recreation fees of $108,000.
Mhm.
Is that gonna be,
Yes, that would be a condition of final approval, and that would be required prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the
Okay.
structure.
And I appreciate you bringing that up,
Yes.
because that's been something I keep asking about for all the projects downtown,
and
not to
from what I
pick on these guys.
understand, in the past, we haven't received those
Right.
fees,
Correct.
and we're gonna make sure that from now on,
Going
we
forward,
have
yes.
discussed it before, that will always be there. You got that, Jeff Murphy, the planner? Oh,
Well, and not just, and to your point, not just this project, but all projects, I
Mhm.
mean, the whole idea is that they pay into a park and rec fee so that we can do some kind of park, and if anybody needs a park or another space to go to, it's people who live in an apartment. So it's important, I think, that we, collect these fees on any residential downtown.
So, back to the discussion of the, 0.4 inches or the 2 inches there was some damage that was done to the Duraska House and to the church across the street, and I know that the 116 units are getting near to the request for an issuance of a certificate of occupancy. And I know that the developer had told us all along that if there was any damage to those structures, that he would fix it. Has anyone done an assessment about that? Because I don't wanna see something similar happen here that is not included in any final approval resolution.
So just to clarify your question, Councilwoman, would you like surveys because that project, the one that maybe caused damage to the Duraska residents and the church, was located directly to the south across the street, significantly closer. I don't have the distances in front of me. This project is significantly farther away. Would you like assessments done of those properties, just to be
No, not for this particular application, but I'm just wanting something in the final approval that says that if there is damage from the pier driving of this project, if there was damage to neighboring properties, even though the engineer says that there won't be based on the vibration, that they would be responsible to fix those repairs. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but maybe you can go in and do an assessment on it.
Can I speak? Okay, so first of all, that condition was contained in the preliminary approval, and we're agreeing to allow that condition to continue into the final approval.
okay.
That we're going to do a pre-construction survey of surrounding properties, existing conditions of surrounding properties. We're gonna provide an assurance that it's acceptable to the town attorney's office for us to do any repairs that have been caused by our construction. That was a condition in the preliminary, and it'll be a condition in the final.
Thank you.
Secondly, I want to respond to the supervisor's question about the $108,000 fee. That fee will be paid, but that fee is paid at the time we're looking for issuance of certificate of occupancy for the units. So that's, that's at least a year away, just to clarify. So that's not paid now, that's paid as a condition of the town issuing us certificate of occupancy for the units. Thirdly, we're really requesting that we have the town board consider 2 resolutions on October 6th. The first resolution would be a Chapter 229 permit resolution, approving the Chapter 229 permit to allow the exportation of fill as part of our construction of, our installation of foundation and and drainage, that we're gonna have to dig some holes and remove some fill from the site in order to do the subsurface improvements. So we're asking that resolution be adopted first, and then the final site plan approval resolution be adopted also on October 6th. So we're requesting those be done so that we can move forward with the demolition and the removal of the Norton House the following week. So it will take us a week at least to commence mobilization for the demolition of the existing structures, which includes the relocation of a portion of the Norton House. So we asked the town board to move forward with those two resolutions at its next meeting. We respectfully request that go forward so we can start meeting our timelines so that we can do the site work and commence construction prior to the winter.
So is the moving of the Norton House, that's contingent upon the final site plan approval?
No. I don't think so.
I mean, you would need to issue, maybe I could ask Bob Kozakevich about this. I mean, can a structure, the removal of the Norton House, can that be executed without a final site plan approval? And I don't.
Really haven't thought about it.
It's a building permit to
It's-
move a
I
structure.
would think that would be.
We don't own the property yet. We don't own the property yet, and we're not gonna own the property until we get final site plan approval. So we're not gonna ask Phil Hancock, the current owner of the property, to allow us to relocate the Norton House prior to us owning the property. So we really need to move forward with final site plan approval. We would need the chapter 229 exportation of materials resolution first, because that's a requirement for us to get final site plan approval. So in the sequencing, you'd want to grant us the exportation of materials first, and then the resolution approving final site plan, so that we can get a demolition permit, so we can relocate the Norton House after we close on the property. We're looking to close within days of final site plan approval being issued, so that we can take ownership. We're not gonna request that the current owner allow structures to be removed from his property prior to us taking ownership of the property.
And that makes sense. You're not gonna expect people to start picking up your property before you close.
Correct.
So, the only question that I have is chapter 229, I thought that the town code was specific in saying that you can't get an exportation permit unless you have a building permit. Is that correct? It is correct. So how do we go around that? So do you have construction plans in that are being reviewed to where you have a demo?
We've had plans in for review for a very long time. The only issue at this point, really, the only issue that needed to be resolved was the relocation of the Norton House.
Okay, so maybe.
The rest of the issues can be conditions of final site plan approval. We're gonna have to go through the normal conditions.
I know, but-
Listed in those conditions are the exportation of materials, the covenant that has to be put in by us to benefit the town, and we wanna take ownership of the property so we can start construction.
Understood, but we don't wanna be in violation of our own ordinance. So what I'm asking is that can we do the site plan approval first, do the demo permit, so you'll have the demo permit, which will make it so that you can export, then we can do you have the demo permit in now?
No, but we were waiting to hear whether we were gonna relocate this Norton House or not relocate it.
Well, you can
as
get the
of
demo
last week-
permit.
At the end of last week, it was, the discussions were there was no suitable location determined for the relocation. So now, we're glad to hear, really happy to hear that the town has found a spot to place the Norton House. We've worked with everybody. Bobby's had several meetings with whomever the town has asked us to meet with. He's met with Richard Wines. I had conversations with Cliff and another individual that was looking to possibly assume ownership of the Norton House. Bobby met with Cliff and Paolo last week, I believe. It was last Friday. We'd be glad to work with the town, but we need to start moving forward.
Okay,
with-
so all I'm asking is, can you make an application for a demo permit? Because
We will.
then
We'll make
we'll do the site plan approval, we'll do the exportation contingent upon the demo permit issued. And if you have the demo permit application in, then they can issue that the next day on October 7th, and then you can start exporting October 7th. We just don't wanna go to the zoning board of appeals for relief of 229, because you don't have a permit. So if you have a demo permit, then you can start the exportation right away.
So the good news is we have a location, and just gonna check, Anne Marie, since you worked on that whole relocation, do you have anything to add to this at this time? Or any other points that we need to, in light of this whole discussion?
Well, the councilwoman and I are waiting for confirmation. We are cautiously very optimistic. I would like the town board's permission to, I'm gonna prepare a resolution as if this will move forward for your consideration. And, you know, I just put it out there to the town board as the developer is stating time is of the essence. If the councilwoman and I can receive confirmation regarding the relocation and the town board has had a resolution to consider, we might want to consider moving by special town board hearing on that application, so I can start that clock rolling. And then thereafter, I guess on October 6th, is it? October 6th, you can move forward with the rest of the matters and proceedings with respect to 331. It's just a consideration, so the minute the councilwoman and I know, or she knows, she'll let me know.
Yeah, we're just waiting for, we're trying to coordinate Verizon, Cablevision, and the raising of the light pole, the light pole wires.
Yes, and his construction engineer, Mr. Castaldi's construction engineer, I believe will be out at the site either today or tomorrow, to look at this location, because it wasn't the original one anticipated, and he's gonna confirm whether or not it's workable.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
Do we need to involve our engineer? No. At all? No, because we want the entire responsibility and liability on the developer. We don't want our engineers actually having to inspect or opine.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Right. Greg, you're back up here?
I mean, if the direction is to prepare a draft resolution for the 6th, I can do that, if that's the direction of the board.
It's just a draft, so start it going.
All right,
Yeah, I mean, I'm all right with that, but I do wanna look over all of this, but
all right.
I think we need to continue moving forward.
So site plan approval first, 229, and he'll get the demo permit in, which could be issued on the 7th, and then, so
We
if
would have the final site plan approval. I would also have a 229 exportation permit, pending the receipt of cut fill calculations. I mean, that's really like a small procedural thing, you know, there's a fee to be paid, I believe it's $2 per cubic yard. You know, I don't think that's as big of a hurdle to this project as it's made out
and
to
the
be.
demo permit, whether or not there would be any, certification that there's no asbestos in the building and all of that,
Yep.
right?
Yeah,
And
I mean,
you
that's
will-
standard procedure for any demolition permits, I guess.
And you'll send us out the draft resolution when
Yep,
it's ready.
I'm gonna work on it, and I'll have it to you for next week's town board work session.
Okay, great.
Richard,
Thank
I
you
just
all.
want to thank you and Landmarks for your participation in this and making this happen and never giving up. It's a great thing that this house is going to be able to be saved, and Mr. Castaldi, I certainly appreciate his interest and his money, quite honestly, that he's going to put into this to make this happen. And Bobby, I appreciate you guys being patient and allowing this to happen so we didn't lose this historic house. The conversation to be had really is, do we want to lose a couple parking spaces or do we want to save the house? It's a no-brainer. You know, we're talking about parking spaces all the time downtown, but in this particular area, they're not exactly a desirable parking spot unless there's a huge event in town.
Because people
Plus,
just
we
wanna
have
walk.
that parking, as Jody mentioned, we have that parking on Roanoke and First, that certainly can take care of any spaces we would lose with the placement of the Norton House. So to me, it's a win-win, and I just want to thank everybody for their coordinated efforts in this, and we're glad to see it happen.
To give a shout out to Cliff, because Cliff did a lot of work on it, and he's with us today. He's been working diligent on this as well.
And also, the applicant who's also helped fund this effort, we appreciate that.
Yeah, can I just say, add one last thing, please?
Sure.
This sounds like we have tremendous momentum right now. I'd like to see this moved forward. The developers here have responded to every request made by the town, have done everything you've asked of them. We just would like to move it forward, keep the momentum going. It seems like you really want to move quickly for the person who's receiving the house. I would hope that you would be just as inclined to move as quickly for the person who's looking to donate the house.
Well, it's gonna be October 6th, the next town board meeting is what we've said, so that's pretty quick.
I don't think we could be any
Very
quicker.
quick. They get quicker than that, I think. Okay,
Thank-
thank you all. All right, moving forward, number 4, building planning, matters surrounding code revision, chapter 301, dash 305, Greg, welcome
right.
back.
Thank you. Yes, it's been a while. So this was a follow-up discussion. We had come before the town board, I believe it was July 30th, work session. There is a section in the site plan fee code section, specifically 301-305G4. The way the code was written, it states that if any land clearing, site work, or building construction or alteration is commenced prior to the submission of a site plan application, the required review fee shall be double the fee delineated in 301-305G2 above and may exceed $30,000. Now, the way that code was written, technically, someone could submit a site plan application on Friday, get it filed with the planning department. Saturday, if they went in and just clear cut the property, they would technically not be in violation of that section. So the initial amendment that I had proposed back on July 30th changed that section of submission of a site plan application to now read, if any land clearing, site work, or building construction or alteration is commenced prior to the granting of final site plan approval, including satisfaction of all conditions of said approval, the required application review fee shall be doubled. That basically would capture anybody, and again, this is not for, anybody who needs to just go in and do minor clearing for test holes. This was really to capture, those bad actors who would go in on a weekend, which we've seen throughout the, go in on a weekend, clear cut the property, and then it's oops. So it was really just to button up that loophole. Now, the resolution that's in Minitrack is as I had just read to you. At the July 30th work session, Councilwoman Giglio did raise some concerns about exemptions for if applicants needed to do test holes for health department approval. So I do have a draft here, which was not in Minitrack. I just wanted to have it here for discussion purposes.
Thank you.
Were we given this beforehand?
So the resolution is in Minitrack as I recited to you. It was put in Minitrack a few days ago.
But was this online? Because usually when you give us documents, they go online. Did you give this to us yesterday?
I just prepared this morning, and I
Okay.
did distribute it to Devin. Again, this is
All right,
just
so
for,
she's gonna
this
have
is
to
just
put
for
it up.
discussion purposes to address one of the councilwoman's concerns.
Okay.
As I said, right now, the resolution is in Minitrack. In that section that's before you, I did add 2 subsections, number 5 and number 6. And I did those kind of in an effort to maybe calm any concerns that the board may had. Subsection 5 went on to read that an applicant may qualify for a certificate of exemption from the penalties enumerated in subsection G4 of this section for the limited clearing or excavation for soil borings, provided that the clearing and amount of material excavated or exported is limited to the amount required to obtain the boring sample. And then subsection 6 would read, in order to obtain a certificate of exemption as enumerated in subsection G5, an applicant must submit a plan detailing any and all vegetation to be removed and identify any and all grading which must be performed in order to obtain the boring sample. Basically, this was done, and again, we've reviewed applications before where applicants have had to go in and do some limited clearing, remove a couple of trees in order to get these borings. This is not, our common sense would dictate this section of code is in place to prevent someone from just going and clear cutting the property. It was never really intended to prevent people from going through the natural process of the application to get the things that are required for. And most times when we get site plan applications, test borings already have been performed. They do need that information to determine suitability for drainage, to determine sanitary system requirements. So really, you know, like I said, if the board would like to see those two subsections in there to calm any concerns about any potential exemptions, I just wanted to be clear that, you know, an applicant coming in needs to identify where they're gonna clear cut. We're not just gonna, oh, we need to remove some trees. Well, what are some trees? What is that actually gonna look like? So like I said, right now, the draft before you, subsection 5 and 6 are not in there. If the board would like, I could put those into Minitrack. But we do have a resolution to schedule a public hearing because we would like to move on this, just because it does kind of leave a little gap in our code.
Okay, so I see that you're requesting a public hearing for the 4th, November 4th.
Correct.
All right, so we'll check our calendar, okay, before you put it in Minitrack.
All right.
Make sure that, you know, we're clear.
Well, I did run by the town clerk. We do, I mean, that time is available. If the board, I do have a resolution to schedule the public hearing on October 6th if the board would like.
Okay,
we can get
let's just check this with the office in case, we have 2 or 3 or 4. Sometimes we try to, depending on the size of the project, we try to limit them.
All right.
We just have to check with the
All right.
office.
Is there any other?
I wanna discuss some things here. So, as per the proposed changes to the building permit fees, current fees as per town code, a letter of pre-existing use or a duplicate CO.
Well, this is not, yeah, that's a separate.
That's another
That's
issue
that's a,
coming up.
Oh,
that's
that's
a
a different
Yeah,
conversation.
this is just for site, this is just for that site plan fee amendment.
So that's what, okay, that's fine.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
that's it?
So then, what about these proposed changes to building permit fees? Why is this in our packet?
So that's our next item.
All right, so Jeff, you're done with this?
Yeah, site plan fee is done.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was number 4. Now we're moving on to number 5, building matters surrounding possible amendments to building fees.
Yeah.
Catherine?
So, this was brought to us by Andreas. I mean, Jeff oversees the department, but Andreas is, proposing this, so I'm gonna pitch it to Andreas to talk to us about it. I think it's about updating fees.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm only here about 4 months, but, you know, I've noted that the fees are, have not been updated or changed since, I believe, 2004. And I think that the changes proposed are somewhat, I tried to make a minimal impact on each resident, but yet provide some more revenue to the town to help some of the shortcomings that we have and be able to run the department a little bit better as far as, incoming fees that we have, because, as everybody knows, there's budget constraints right now. So, you know, Jody, I guess I would like to start with any concerns that you had right away.
Yeah,
So we can talk about that.
as per New York state law, we can't impose impact fees based upon the fact that there's a shortfall in the budget. We have to assess the work and the time involved in doing the work,
Right.
and that's what we're supposed to be basing our fees on. So, there's a couple of things here that I'm concerned about, especially when it comes to residential dwellings and the affordability of, even putting a pool in, let alone charging a $500 building permit fee, when really you're, how much time is involved in issuing a building permit fee, when you have the engineer for the pool company giving you the drawings, we go out and inspect, we do a final inspection, and that's pretty much it, so.
Well, I have actually done a little bit of work into that, and it is somewhat more involved in that, and, but certainly I would like to let you complete what you're saying, and, I didn't just base it on the fact that we need more revenue, I based it on the fact that the inspections that are done, the work and time involved in review and everything else, it just doesn't add up for what we have.
Right.
Okay, so
And
if you-
just to, I mean, when it came to the committee, we didn't actually have a discussion about revenue or, you know, economic problems. The discussion was about that this hasn't been updated. And we've been finding over the last several years that a lot of the things have never been updated, a lot of the fees have never been updated. So, that's what we worked on, and I don't know, usually we look at what where other towns are. as
Right, and I
well.
did a comparison on that a little bit, and I also, for, you know, purposes, I did picked 3 items. I used a 400 square foot deck, a 600 foot, a 600 foot deck, a 400 square foot garage, and a 500 square foot single-story addition, based on new fees and old fees. And for the garage, let's say a detached garage, the old fee was $458, the new fee would be $658, which I think is minimal impact to a resident. However, as it adds up to different residents doing it, it would help out the town and the work involved, because there's foundation inspections, review time, inspections you go on, they're not ready, or they're not completed, you gotta go back.
Andres,
It's,
I see, where did you get these, proposed fees? I see most of the time they're doubled or even tripled. How do you justify a denial letter on someone who
Yeah.
applied for a permit, okay? And we denied them, and now we're gonna ask them for $100?
well, the problem with the
This is-
denial fee is that we get a denial and they change it, so I have one right now that they've changed it 4 times prior to even getting ready to go to the zoning board. And the whole department, not just the building department, the planning department, Carissa, everybody is revising it, changing it, talking with the designers, and we're not getting anything, so
Okay, so,
the theory was.
So then you could classify it as a maybe an updated application fee, but,
Okay.
the denial, I have a problem going
Okay,
from none.
all right, I just
And I'm-
assumed that if they come in for a denial, hey, give us $100, and we could even apply it towards a building department fee later, but the work
Right.
involved with the denial, it seems to be a lot of,
So if you have to enhance the application or do extra work, then charge them accordingly. But doubling fees,
so I'm still on swimming pool, and then I'm gonna
Okay.
go to letter of pre-existing use, and then duplicate CO, and then denial letter, and
Okay.
go down the line, so
okay.
I guess with the swimming
Jefferson,
pool,
There's one point to be made.
you
in all
need to
this.
get to the mic, cause we can't hear you. Sorry?
There's one point to be made in all this, and we had the same discussion with the site plan and subdivision fees. They have to be commensurate, as Jody said, with the amount of work being done. And a lot of times, there's a shortfall. We're putting more hours in than what the application fee incurs. And when that happens, that means that the general taxpayer is now subsidizing the cost of that building permit review. When a person comes for a swimming pool, that's for his sole benefit. It's not for the benefit of his neighbors. Our job is to make sure that the swimming pool is going to be installed to protect the public safety of not just the homeowner, but everybody using it, so that nobody is going to get electrocuted, that sort of thing. So the cost of a review of a swimming pool, that's considered almost like a luxury item, is sole benefit of the person making the application. It's not to the benefit of the people around them. So that if we're under the building permit fee that we're collecting, then all the rest of the taxpayers of the town are subsidizing for the cost of that review of that permit.
understood, and I'm not suggesting that the taxpayers subsidize an individual swimming pool, but I'm
It
just
has to-
saying.
The question is, if it's, in all these cases, is it a $25 increase, is it double increase, is it triple increase? It's really commensurate upon the amount of review involved. And as Andreas is saying, a lot of times we get an application that's not up to par, so to speak, and we have to go back and now review it a second time or a third time, or an inspection has to be done for a second or third time. That's time spent, and
Yeah,
the
I
applicant
don't-
should be responsible for paying for that.
So then why should the person that only submits one application be subject to triple the fee because of the one
And
out
I'm
of
gonna let
10
Andreas-
cases that,
I
and
understand
I don't
that.
even understand that because I do file a lot of things and I do get denial letters and I've gotten them in the past and it's based on what the zoning is, these are your setbacks, and your application is being denied. So every single time they submitted a new application, it's not the same application. You already denied one based on what they showed you. So if they wanna submit a new application, you're gonna charge them again. They wanna
Well, we
submit a new.
don't charge them anything for a denial right now. But let's stick for the swimming pools for 1 second, if you don't mind.
I just wanna see a comparison to other towns, and then I'll be
Oh,
fine
that's
with
fine,
it.
that's fine, I have some
Okay.
here, but, and I think that, I'll discuss that in a second, but with the swimming pool, when I right now they get calculated per square footage and stuff. So really, a swimming pool, my thought was to make it a flat fee, so it's easier, because most swimming pools I calculate are about $250, $300. I've not seen anything over that, but whether that be above ground or in ground, and I just, again, was trying to figure the work involved with inspections, review, electrical inspections and everything else, that, that would be about, we'd be able to come even instead of spending, $800 in man hours for a $300 fee.
I
So
would
that's-
like you to
that-
show me applications that you spend $800 in man, $800 in
No,
man
okay.
hours
Okay.
for a
Again, I'm
swimming
just
pool.
saying something in my head,
skyscraper,
I don't know what the actual calculation is, but I just, first off, for starters, just came I think the discussion was Tuesday, and I had to have this for today, so the time involved and effort that I could put into it was somewhat limited, but I tried to do some comparison with other towns and try and not be higher than that or equal to, but at the same time try and do it with the work involved. And I certainly am not stuck to, hey, this is what we should raise them to, but I would like to be able to get a little,
Yeah,
make
some
it
of-
so we're somewhere in the ballpark of what we're.
Right, and I do like to always hear, I mean, at everything we do pretty much, we do look at what other towns do. We always look
Right,
at Brookhaven, we look at
That's it.
Southold.
Okay, and I think
So
by
you
this
have those
afternoon, I can
numbers?
provide you guys a whole copy of that, but I do have, you know, and I'll use, I have Southold as an example. I have Brookhaven, I was
We
unable
just
to
like to
get.
see it on a spreadsheet,
Yes,
please.
yeah.
Okay,
just
so I'll have to put
collate
that
it
together
for us.
then, that's fine.
Thank you,
so
Jody.
we
It's a lot
can-
easier. You
Uh-huh.
wanna present it, you're confusing the public, now we have to start again. One shot
No, it's,
deal, we can analyze it and work on it and approve it or
And
not.
as far as swimming pools, I mean, there's a difference between a family being able to afford a 5x10 swimming pool that costs $500 and you're asking them to pay a $250 flat fee, which is why we kept it based on the square footage.
Okay.
Because,
I
you know,
agree.
then you have somebody else coming in with a 20x10 pool and they're paying the same fee.
Right, right.
And it's twice as much work or, you know, I
understand.
just, something, so let me digest this a little bit and I'll come over and talk to you about my concerns and
Okay,
then
sure.
information that I'd like from you in order to make a decision on this. And I invite the rest of the board to do so if they feel.
Yeah, and
they should.
I also see the shed fees here. What are they now?
Yeah, it's
Again,
the same
based on
thing.
square footage, so they could be varied. Again, I'll use the garage, you know, cause you could almost think that as somewhat of a shed, but, a 400 square foot garage would be $458. As proposed, that would be $658, which would be 200 more for an applicant to do so. I also calculated a 500 square foot addition. Currently, it would be, $689, and proposed it would be $772. Again, so as
So
much
on
as
the
it
six-
looks like a lot of on
Sorry,
paper,
Andres,
go ahead.
on the 658, what are they charging in Southold or?
He's gonna give us a spreadsheet.
I know, but you've got I'm just curious right now, cause I think you have that with you.
Yes, I do, I
I
have
mean,
the,
I'm cool with waiting till we get a spreadsheet, but just right now, since we're having the discussion,
the Southampton I have here, the Southold I also have, but Southampton for a 500 square foot addition, the fee is $1,604, whereas we are
Are we gonna
$689.
compare our prices on Southampton prices? I'm not too sure it's the right way to go.
No, I
We
understand
have a
that,
lot
I'm
of
just-
seniors here, and,
Southold.
you know,
Well,
I'm
he's
looking,
not-
let me finish, okay, we have a $200, the first permit fee. Somebody pays $150 for a shed, and they have to pay $200 to, you know, for a permit fee, so I think we have to look at this a little bit.
Okay,
closer.
absolutely.
And it is always good to see, what other people are doing, and that's good, because we have to go, follow the law. And, however, fees, you know, this should be the discretion of the town, and it's always good to have, you know, the outside, but please don't compare the fees in Riverhead to Southampton.
Oh, no, I
Acre
just-
land, how much is it, Jody, you would know, how much is an acre land in Southampton?
Well, it depends on where it is, if it's south of the highway or north of the highway,
Okay.
but when we were talking about the, Gentai line and an easement for a Gentai line coming under Edwards Avenue and 457,000 compared to less than an acre of land south of the highway in Watermill or Amagansett, which sells for about $5 million, so.
No, I get that,
It's,
and I have Southold, I just did
Right,
whatever I
so-
could get my hands on Southold.
Yeah, we need to
Southold's
have, and
down.
it's important, and you said you got this on Tuesday and told to present today? So, yeah, right, you only had 2 days, and I get it, you
Right,
were
right.
under the pressure, but let's do a more cohesive, collective, balanced,
Okay.
sheet, and then we'll take it from there. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
so I'm all right with that, I think that's a good idea.
I agree.
I think that I think Andreas is looking to make good changes, and I think he did this for all good reasons. And we don't tend to compare with Southampton, I think Jeff will concur, and Bob, don't we?
Southold is what I.
Bob,
Right.
in code, we tend to look at Southold and Brookhaven, correct?
I generally,
Good.
Because Bob is, you know, and I know Andreas, just because I did ask, and I'm still trying to get that number, I know we're gonna do a spreadsheet and we're gonna put this off to another day, which is fine. But for the 658, what was the number in Southold?
Where are you seeing 658 on here?
Oh, those are the
Catherine?
varied fees.
He
For the
just talked
shed.
about it.
It's not
He
as
talked
what he
about it a
mentioned
couple
for a
times.
500.
mentioned
Yeah,
what
that's based on square footage
Square
and based
foot.
on the cost per
Right.
square foot.
So just give me a couple numbers.
So for a 500 square foot addition, I have 689, not 658. Southold would be $350. For a garage, Southold will be a 400 square foot garage, Southold would be $310, and we would be 458. And then for a 600 square foot deck, Southold would be 390, and currently we're 196.
You're
So
still gonna put it on a spreadsheet, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yes,
So
ma'am.
so I think, it's good to work on it, but let's take a little more time.
Okay.
I appreciate your work, but I think it is a good idea to get it on a spreadsheet so we can look at it
Sure.
and carefully, and, on some things we'll look at Southampton, but in code, we do tend to look at Southold and Brookhaven.
And that's the way it should be. Great, thank you.
But I
Okay,
think,
but I wasn't
you
able
know-
to get the fees, I have to actually call down there and figure out, because
Right.
they're hidden
And
somewhere.
I'm
I
always
wasn't able to
fine
get them.
with waiting on anything that we don't have all the information on, so I appreciate your work, and let's
Okay.
put this off till all the information is in.
Okay.
I agree.
And there's also a big difference between a prefabricated shed where you're picking it up and dropping it on a piece of property. I mean, these costs seem a little bit prohibitive.
I
And-
agree with that, and I'd like to actually make some form of changes, so when these people buy these plastic shed, almost to a point where we have to and that's of course a deeper discussion than this, but I don't believe that we should be, charging almost any fees for that, other than just an administrative,
Because it says
you know.
feet, it says on here shed varied based on size, so for a 144 square foot shed, it's $200, for 500 square foot, $400.
Right.
I mean, a 500 square foot shed that's prefabbed, you could probably buy for $400.
Exactly.
Right, right, yeah.
So,
So
and yet
let's-
they're just picking it up and
So
dropping it
let's
on the
do
house.
this. Let's, you'll get that information, and why don't we discuss it in code again, and you will be there. I know you were not able to make the last code meeting, so, but Jody will most likely be at the next one, so let's have that discussion there before we
Perfect.
bring it to work session
Okay.
again.
I texted Andreas and said I got a flat tire and had to
Yeah.
wait for
Yeah, I
AAA,
know.
that's why I couldn't be here, so,
Right, I knew
mean,
that.
making
I'm
it sound
not-
like I just didn't not come
No,
was
I'm
Yeah.
a
not
little
saying, I didn't,
disingenuous.
Okay, moving forward, bring it back to the board when you have a full,
Absolutely, and thank you guys.
balance of what's going on.
thank you,
Okay,
Andreas.
thank you.
Thank you,
Okay, so
Andreas.
that was number 5, thank you so much, Andres. Number 5 was completed, and now we are on number 6, building matters surrounding possible code revision requiring updated certificate of occupancy. Kaz, can you, I know this was brought up before, can you, come up and, Jody, didn't you bring this up?
Yes, I did, cause I, ran into it in the town, or
Yes.
village of West Hampton Beach, and Brad Hammond did send us over the language, it's just adding a couple sentences into the town code. I know that it's going to be a little more involved for the building department as far as when people apply for updated certificate of occupancy, but from what Brad was telling me is that he just, does it in his tour and on his route to other inspections and stops in and makes sure that everything's the same. If it's not, you're not getting an updated certificate of occupancy, and then they start the building permit process to correct any changes that were made.
So Bob, do you wanna add to this?
Well, actually, Councilperson kind of already addressed it. This is something that the Village of West Hampton Beach has had on their code book for a while. I think they did it in 2001 or 2002. So they have this already in their legislation, and they are implementing it. I did too speak with Brad Hammond, and Brad did confirm that it's something that they have been able to work with. He did note that in their instances, most of the houses are starting at $1 million or more, so it's not really an issue that he's encountered. It has been helpful. The real estate community there has signed on to it, and they're fully supportive of it. I did check with Southold. Southold does not do this. They don't have a process for updated COs. And although I was told Southampton does have it on the books, when I spoke to Jim Burke, he said they had public hearings and they chose not to do it.
It's up to you guys. We'll hear from the public whether they're for it or against it. I know it's going to, as Brad pointed out, it's gonna be initially a hurdle for us because we're gonna have to change people's mindset. It's something additional that they're gonna have to do. But it does address those problems down the road when somebody's bought a house and 10 years later they're told your basement's not legal. So it does bring those things out.
And we have a tremendous problem with overcrowding in the school district and overcrowd house complaints into code enforcement. And I think that changes are being made to people's houses that the town is not aware of. So for the safety of the residents and the people involved, I think it's a small price to pay in order to, I mean, how often are people in the town of Riverhead selling their houses? You know, most of the houses that are for sale are owned by, a lot of them are owned by one person or one entity, and those are the ones that are selling because the town issued code violations. A lot of them are anyway. So I think it's a good idea in order to make sure.
I'd be guessing, you know.
Yeah,
So
so
the
let's go to
reason-
public hearing.
Yeah, so the reason, we did talk about this a little in code, and then there were some varying opinions, and that's why I thought it should come to the board for a work session so that we could figure it all out here.
Yeah, the proposal that's been submitted to you, I'm gonna unabashedly told you I stole it word for word from
Yeah,
Village
I-
of West Hampton Code Book.
I emailed it to you a
Yep.
couple of times. and it
One
came
of, one of the concerns I had was whether we needed to also make some changes to 217, which is our building construction code. But I don't think there's any necessity to do that because we already have language in 217 that suggests that any other COs required by Chapter 330 are in addition there too. So it's already addressed in 217. So by adding this, it's, in my opinion, the only section that we really need to address if there's a desire of the board to go out and have a public hearing.
Yeah.
It will definitely result in more work for the building department. I'm not sure how it'll work in practice, whether we'll be chasing people after the closings.
And I think
Because,
Jeff's
because
gonna
as you
address
know, all of the transactions ultimately come to the assessor's office, and I'm sure that the building department and the assessor will be chatting quite frequently.
Sure.
Well, we don't know.
I think
Maybe
Jeff
some
wants to,
people
I
won't.
think Jeff wants to speak.
But I think that the Village of West Hampton Beach also charges a $150 application fee for an updated, certificate of occupancy. So when you go to list your house, the brokers are making sure that there's an updated certificate of occupancy before they list the house, because the brokers are all licensed in the village. So, we're not asking to do that, but what we are saying is that it'll be a $150 application fee. They'll file it, you'll do an inspection in your travels, arranging an inspection with them, you'll make sure that it's exactly the way the house has a certificate of occupancy on file for.
So just to clarify there, we're gonna change our CO fee, or we're gonna just use our present CO fee, which is because we have a fee for a application for a CO.
But
We
that's
don't
more
have, we don't have one
expensive.
that distinguishes between a CO and an updated CO.
But the inspection is a little
Right.
bit different. But the initial inspection is very intensive.
Right, for a CO,
For a
for a
CO.
certificate of occupancy,
Right.
that's gonna stay the same.
Exactly.
This is just for.
Duplicate COs, I should
No,
have said
just to
duplicate CO.
update it.
Yeah, we don't have an updated CO fee, we have a duplicate CO.
No, that's why we created
So
it.
that's my question.
Yep.
Are we going to also look to amend the fee structure for that?
It's $150 for an updated certificate of occupancy. So when you're getting ready to
Well,
close your
we don't
house-
have an updated CO, we have a duplicate CO
No, no,
presently.
Okay.
For,
Hold
under
on.
our code.
Okay, so I, own a house,
Right,
I have a house for 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. That's my CO, it's in the
Right.
file, it's on the computer in the building
it's
department.
already there, correct.
Somebody applies for an updated CO, cause they're getting ready to close, and you go in and has 4 bedrooms and 3 baths and a finished basement.
I
You
understand.
don't issue them an updated certificate of occupancy, you send them a letter telling them they cannot close until they come into the building department and take out a new permit. They would come in, they would have to apply for the permits to legalize it, and then they would go through the process of the building permit, which is the standard fees that we've been charging all along,
Right,
except they would
I
be
understand
doubled
that.
because the work's already done. And then they would go to a certificate of occupancy once the work has been completed and the inspections have occurred. So this is
Understood.
just
Understood.
ensuring that everything in the house is the same as it was when the original certificate of occupancy was issued.
I understand that issue, okay.
That just goes to my question that,
it's in the code already, there has to be a fee for this. Because guaranteed, and Jody, you know this better than I've got a closing next week. And I need a C of O by next week.
That's right.
And that means that we're now be expected to take in and supplement that inspection much faster than it normally would, so.
Okay. So if they need it within, just like I told the fire marshal, if you need it within a week, then it's a $300 fee.
Correct. That's what I'm thinking. So if it's not in the code already, Bob, and I'm looking at Bob Andres. Yeah, we'd have to take a look. If there, as companion to this, we need to take a look at that fee to make sure it's commensurate with the level of inspection that's gonna be required. That's all I'm asking.
That makes sense.
Okay. We're creating a new fee schedule for this because it's not currently in the code for an updated certificate of occupancy. So all the other fees are gonna be the same except for what we discussed earlier in trying to change the fees. And then, you know, if they need something expedited, then, okay, we're gonna fit you into the schedule, but it's gonna cost you more money because you may have to do it on overtime.
That's all I'm asking. I just wanna make sure that
Yes, makes sense.
So I don't know how backed up you are on your inspections now, whether it's a week or 2 weeks, like what's the standard from when somebody calls and orders an inspection?
We're telling them currently 2 weeks, but I don't believe they were 2 weeks out. I believe it's, you know, keep fitting me comfortably within that time frame.
Okay, so you may wanna say then it's $150 for, you know, 2 weeks prior to give yourself a little bit of a buffer. Cause they would, $150, they would they would expect an inspection within 2 weeks. If it's less than 2 weeks, then maybe the fee is $300 because you have to fit it into your schedule or do it on overtime.
Yeah, and that was something that Mr. Hammond also pointed out, with that the updated COs do require a quicker turnaround timeframe. And they're, you know, but again, in their community, as you've pointed out, Councilperson, the realtors are on board. This is something that they're lining up as they're listing the properties, so they're doing it as a pro forma.
Yeah.
It's gonna require a little bit of a change of mindset here.
Yeah, I mean, the way I found out about it is because a broker in the village of West Hampton Beach said, you know, can you come and look at this and help me get the certificates of occupancy? They did all this work in the basement, and then in speaking to Brad, he's like, well, that site plan for those condos prohibits improved basements. They have to be unimproved. So I said, no, there's nothing anybody can do. You have to revert it back to an unfinished basement.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
Okay.
Sorry, that Attorney Reese is an excellent point. A lot of these times, it's not just going out to the site and seeing what they've done to the site. That's different from what the prior CFO says. It may require doing a thorough review of the files to see what the covenants say. So there is time involved with our staff to do this sort of work.
I think, you know, $150 I think is reasonable if you have a couple of weeks' notice. And a lot of that stuff should be on the system. So as you're bringing it out, put it on Carissa's desk or put it on, you know, someone in the building department's desk so that they can upload the covenants to all those properties.
Yeah, and the way that CFOs have been done in the past, not just in this jurisdiction, I've noticed in other jurisdictions, has been at times severely lacking. We'll just see a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch. Doesn't say anything about the basement, doesn't say about the attic, doesn't say unfinished this, unfinished
Covered
that.
entryway.
Right, it doesn't say any of that. And you go out there and it's totally different from what that, because the initial C of O was very generic in the old days. So now we're having to, I've been really impressing upon, back when Brad was here, back now with Andreas here, I've been really emphatic about that these C of Os really need to be detailed and spelling out exactly what is on that property and what they're allowed to do.
Yeah, Brookhaven started doing that about 10 years ago, where they started putting covered entry, and they started putting, you know, outside basement entrance, and...
The funniest certificate of occupancy I've ever seen was for a McDonald's restaurant, and the only thing that the C of O said was McDonald's.
Yeah, that was,
Okay.
I bet you I can tell you who issued that CO.
And
oh no.
we had to go in
I'm
and
not gonna
revise it
mention
because
names.
it had to do, and I said, well, it could have been Old McDonald's Farm, so I mean, we had to
Right.
go. That's just an extreme example, but it's one that we really need to update as we go forward with issuing these type of permits.
Right.
Okay.
One final question. So, resolution for the 6th and public hearing, if it's able to be held on the first meeting in November, is that the desire of the board?
Please,
Okay.
my desire anyway. I think it's ready to go to public hearing.
Okay, so, did you tell Brad that we're copying his,
Yes.
resolution?
Yep.
All right, that's it? Any other comments?
That's okay, they cut and plagiarized our outdoor dining application, so for,
Yeah,
Everybody did.
I remember us working on that
East
weekend, day
Hampton
and night.
did, Southampton, well, Southampton changed a little bit, but East Hampton did, and,
No, Jay told me he took most of
Yeah,
it. He
they-
called me
they
up and
did.
said, I'm about to do this. Nobody else did, but it was good. All right, everyone, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, that's it. This wraps up our discussion. Can I have a first and second to go into executive session?
Motion.
Catherine? We're making a motion to go into executive session?
Yes.
Do you wanna?
Yeah, I'm coming in, I'm just stepping outside.
Okay, I need the motion so we can end the tape.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just 1 second. Okay, can I have a first and a second to go into executive session?
Motion.
second.
Good. All in favor? All
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So moved. Everyone have a safe one, and we'll see you next week at Thursday for a work session.